Today is day 7 of the 2026 Nashville blizzard, ice storm, wintry condition, whatever it is being called. It's really cold here and trees have fallen all over the city and there's still a little bit of ice on the streets. But what's happened is thousands upon thousands of people are without power and heat because of trees, the weight of the ice and snow knocking trees down into power lines, including one of my sons and his wife and his children. So we have had a full house at my house. One son, one daughter-in-law, 4 grandchildren, plus almost every day the cousins have come over, somehow have ended up over at my house. And so it's been busy. It's been great. It's been busy. This morning, like each of the other days, it has been difficult finding a time and place to read my Bible, to pray, to seek God. When it's just Deborah and I, it's relatively simple. I have my spot and my time, and she has her spot and her time. Hers is earlier than mine. They overlap a little bit, and the day starts great. This morning, as I had this, my place, my spot, I heard a sound, and it was a 5-year-old sneaking up on me to try to surprise me. And each day it's been something like that. But I want to talk today to leaders, spiritual leaders, about the importance of that time and place to seek God every day. And sometimes it's more difficult than others. Sometimes it's really easy and routine. But when the routine is broken up, what do we do? Or even as the routine gets a little bit mundane sometimes, do we continue to press on in that time and place to seek God? I don't want to imply at all that it's been anything other than a joy to have my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren and their cousins, my other grandchildren at my house. It's been wonderful, but sometimes disruptive to a normal pattern of what you do. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to look at a scripture about this idea of seeking God and being face-to-face with God. And the story we're about to read, and in fact, I'm certain that I have done a Think Like a Leader video on this text, but reading it earlier this morning, I thought, I think there's a different angle I want to talk about this. So I'm sure I've preached this text multiple times, and some of you have probably heard me talk about this text, but maybe today will be slightly different with the circumstances and even this text. It was out of the routine of whatever the spiritual practices would have been because of the circumstances we'll read about. So here we go. Genesis chapter 32 and verse 30. This is at the end of this encounter that Jacob has had with God. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and my life has been delivered." The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. So you know the story. You've probably taught the story. You've probably preached the story. You've certainly heard it preached and heard it taught. Jacob is fleeing from his father-in-law on the one side, fleeing from his brother and his father on the other side, and he has this encounter with God. It's a wrestling with God, with a manifestation of the voice and the presence of God. And he describes it when he comes out of this as that, one, he saw God face to face. In seeing God face to face encounter with God caused him to limp. His hip socket was touched, and he never walked the same again. About this time last year, one of my grandsons had a sledding accident on a hill nearby and broke his leg, and he was in a cast. And when he got the cast off, he still hobbled. And we have videos. It's kind of funny the way he walked and the way he ran. Eventually, it got back to normal. But you could see him walk when he got his cast off and know something had happened. He walked differently than other kids his age. He walked differently than he did before. But with Jacob, after this face-to-face encounter with God, he walked differently for the rest of his life. Literally, everyone could see him coming, and because he walked different than everyone else, and he walked not the same way he had walked previously in his life, there was something different about the way he walked, and it was obvious to all. And I think spiritually and figuratively and metaphorically, that's a picture of our spiritual life. When we encounter God face to face, we should walk differently. It should be obvious to others, like it was in the book of Acts when they said, look, these guys are uneducated and they're not the smartest, but we know they've been with God. And there was something about the way they talked and walked and related to people that was obvious. And that's what's happened here to Jacob. He's had this face-to-face with God, and it was transformative. It was transformational. It changed him in a way that people noticed. Now, I think everyone watching this wants a face-to-face relationship with God and a face-to-face encounter with God. This wasn't every day, but yet there is this face-to-face thing with God. I think everybody wants that. Every spiritual leader that I know wants that. And every spiritual leader I know wants transformation in their life. We don't want to just be the same struggles, the same stumblings, the same attitudes, the same reactions. We want transformation. We want to change. And so if you want face-to-face with God, and if you want transformative things happening in your relationship with God that becomes obvious to people that you've changed for the better, then we need to go back up and see what setting made this happen. And if we go back to verse 22, and this is what made me think about, I was reading this morning, just in my regular Bible reading, and thinking about my grandkids around in my house. And even though I put my headphones on with noise canceling, they only cancel like plain noise. They don't cancel laughing and whatever else is going on in the other room, the noise. But this made my distraction seem like nothing. The same night, he, talking about Jacob, rose and took his 2 wives. Oh, okay, that's a problem. And again, just a note on that. The Bible simply reports reality. It's not endorsing having multiple wives. It's just reporting what this guy did. And as you can read through his story, you see this is not a good idea, but that's for a different video. So here he goes. His 2 wives, his 2 female servants. Okay, each of the wives had a servant. So that's 4 of them. And his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. All right, so this is 15 people. Besides Jacob, it's Jacob, 2 wives, 2 servants, 11 children, 15. I thought, wow, that's a crowd. That's difficult finding that time and that place to seek God. But he's running, he's on the run, and he's got this crowd. And then it says he took the 11 children, the 2 wives, the 2 servants, and it says in verse 22, he sent them across the stream and everything he had. In verse 24, and again, this is the starting point. This is what created the condition, what created the context, what created the environment so that Jacob could have this face-to-face encounter with God that was transformative. This is the environment where he could be face-to-face with God and come out changed differently for the rest of his life. Verse 24, and Jacob was left alone. Most of the New Testament, when it talks about prayer, it's communal prayer. Most of the time when spiritual things are happening, it's people together in community, and that is the norm. And that is the way God typically moves and shapes us. It's through His presence and His Word through other people. But there are also times when we have to be alone. There are great things that happen deep in our souls that transform the way we walk, sometimes only when we're alone. And once he pushed everything across the stream, this phrase, these 4 words, Jacob was alone. Being alone started this wrestling with what we know later he described as I was face to face with God and I lived to tell about it. It starts this wrestling with God. Jacob's face to face wrestling with God hits its crisis moment in verse 27. And this divine wrestling, a question comes out. And he said to Jacob, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. This seems like an odd pinnacle of this wrestling point. But in chapter 27, it was the last time this exact question was asked, but it wasn't God asking. It was Isaac, his dad, asking him. And Jacob was trying to deceive his dad to get a blessing. And remember, he put the fur on his arms, and he put on his brother's clothing, and he cooked food that his brother loved to cook and eat. And so he smelled like his brother. His dad, Isaac, was basically blind, and he felt his hairy arms because of the fur, and he smelled the clothes of a hunter, which was his brother Esau, how he smelled, but it was Jacob. And Isaac's maybe not sure, is this? And he says, what is your name? And if you remember, Jacob lied and he deceived in order to get a blessing. He lied and deceived, betrayed his dad. He lied and deceived and stole his brother's blessing. Pretty ungodly thing to do, and that was pretty much the pattern of Jacob's life until this moment. And so he's taken back in history that was years before. And so that same question comes back here in his wrestling with God. What's your name? And I imagine Jacob thought back, oh, that question again. That question is what started me on this journey of running from my brother, what sent me to another nation and with a horrible father-in-law and all the things that he went through that now he's running from going the other direction. I'm still back to that question. And you know, God has a way of taking us back to the point of departure and asking the same question we don't want to be asked anymore. But again, that happens when we're alone. We can drown out the painful questions God asks us by keeping people around all the time. Activity, endless ministry activity, endless relational activity. But there is that moment when we're alone with God, hopefully by choice and by discipline and by routine, but that's not what this was. This was not really planned out, but here he is alone with God, face to face. And there's that question again. What's your name? And I'm sure he's thinking about, gosh, when my dad asked me, I lied. And that started all the problems I've experienced But this time he tells the truth. He faces the truth. He speaks the truth. Then he describes it as a transformational face-to-face with God. Let me encourage you. Do whatever you can, despite the busyness, despite the break of routine, do everything you can to have that time alone to encounter God, especially as a spiritual leader. Absolutely necessary. I want to end with a scripture about what Jesus did. And Jesus lived a very busy life. He had people pressing him all the time. And we find that throughout the Gospels, typically the larger the crowds grew, the more Jesus would withdraw to be alone with the Father by himself. Sometimes Peter, James, and John would join that aloneness, but often it was Jesus trying to get away from the crowd to be alone with the Father. But Mark starts his Gospel with this. Mark chapter 1, verse 35. Rising very early in the morning. I hate very early in the morning. But here's Jesus' pattern. Rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went to a desolate place, and there he prayed. Jesus had a time and place to meet face to face with the Father. It was, for him, the time was very early, before sunrise. For him, the place was a desolate place, a lonely place, a place where others couldn't find him to present their needs. That's how Jesus started his day. That was the routine. Time and place. Early morning, desolate place away. When I was a campus missionary, before I was married, my time was midnight to 1 or 2. That changed when I got married. Midnight because I did campus ministry. And I did dorm Bible studies night after night. And I would go to one dorm at 7 o'clock, and then I would go to the next dorm at maybe 9 o'clock, and that would last till midnight. And that was prime time back in the day when I was a campus missionary, ministering to students. And then I would sleep late. But my time was midnight and beyond. I would have my time in the Word, my time seeking God. And then I would sleep till mid-morning because the campus was asleep. And then by noon, I'm out back on campus again. It's very different now. There are different times and seasons. When we had children were getting off to school, there was a different time. My wife got up way earlier. I got up, I was, once the kids were gone, then I had time set aside in the morning. Not early morning like my wife, but morning. It's changed a lot. Now I have a specific time I'm up, and I have a specific place when I'm in Nashville. I have a spot. That is my spot. That is my time, except when we have all the grandkids and the house is full. And I do my best with that. I hope you have a time and a place. For Jesus, it was early morning. I don't know what it is for you, but it can't just be random. Time and a place. And I'm grateful that as a brand new Christian, 16 years old, the youth pastor at First Pres, my spiritual mentor, Ron, pressed hard for us, every one of us, teenagers, new believers, to have a time and a place to read the Bible, to pray, to memorize Scripture, to study, to seek God. And I want to encourage you as a leader, if especially the busier you get, the more important, time and place. And I pray, I hope, I trust that you will have face-to-face encounters with God that will transform the way you walk in a way that will be obvious to everyone.